Your tagline is stay in the fight. And what keeps you in the fight?
No, that one's more simple than I thought it was going to be, actually. What keeps me in the fight are my babies. And I nowadays, like the last month or so, just simply striving to be a better human being has kind of been a real turn on for me. So maybe that's more of a personal, this is a personal battle between myself that maybe I don't talk about a lot, but I have a lot of inner dialogue with myself about, kind of strategizing or like critiquing and breaking things down. Or I have to constantly remind myself what I am and what I'm standing for. I'm a man of God. And for different reasons than I thought I would be. Like I remember staying up late with a friend trying to debunk God and spirituality till like 3 a.m. I didn't win. I lost bad, with not only evidence, but also with like ideas that just made more sense than what I had previously thought. So I found that really interesting. I've had enough happen in my personal life too, where I've seen that there is God, and I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, or they're like, oh, he said the G word, right? Because that's like, for some reason, it's frowned upon when somebody says that, but that's the truth. And I can go, if you want to learn more about that and what I've seen and what's happened, specifically with life and death situations, and where life was restored when it otherwise shouldn't have been. Science can't explain that. I can't explain where in my body I am. And that bothered me. That's just an example. So what keeps me going? Doing the work of what I think God wants me to do, or, I know he has a will for me, but I also have my own mission. And sometimes those coincide, sometimes they don't. Sometimes me carrying out my own mission of keeping people in the fight is prevented by something that happens. Maybe I get sick. But it comes down to doing that work, continuing my mission, and I don't even care if I don't succeed, because again, the outcome doesn't matter. It's about, I've already won because I'm going to try or die trying to do this. That's what I decided. Yeah, that's what makes me undefeatable. You can't stop me anymore because I already decided. I made the decision. So even if I lose, did I do what I needed to do? Yes. So I can lay my head down, and if I lose hard or I die, then I can do it in peace. And part of all that too is being a good dad, like I said before, being a good husband, making sure I guide those people, my kids, my wife, and be a part of their lives and protect them, teach them, and let them have fun. Let them live their life, have a good time, create those memories. That's why I'm here. I'm dad, I'm a husband, and I like to, I'm going to self-proclaim here a bit, but I like to consider myself a legitimate warrior in a lot of different ways. And that's another reason I'm interested in philosophy these days, because that word used to scare me, and I used to think it's a bunch of just wackos from like 300 BC that were just like, but it's scary how, it's almost terrifying how those words from philosophy, like specifically Stoic philosophy, relate to modern time. And going through some of this stuff, it's like, you can't tell that this person wrote this in 300 BC or 400 BC. It seems like they wrote it today, or it could be 100 years from now. It's just, and it's that thirst for knowledge, I guess. I want to be better, and that means I have to train my mind and my body. So I hope I answered your question, but it's about just my kids. Really, without them, everything would be a little more shallow, I think, or at least feel a little more empty. And they make it a lot harder and make it a lot more stressful and make me have a lot more anxiety and challenges, but it's also more fulfilling and rewarding. So in that regard, yeah, I think doing the work of God, fulfilling my mission, being a dad and husband, that's what keeps me in the fight.
What would you say are your main triggers for flare-ups, and what do flare-ups look like for you and feel like for you?
Oh, so open-ended. Well, I know one trigger for sure. Inactivity. Movement, I think, is the best natural remedy for fibro.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal take on that. And it doesn't have to be like something intense at all. Like simply what I learned from a therapist was slow walking, pretty simple. Just walk slow. And as long as I'm moving my body at all, the pain is lessened. Like it's sometimes it's still there, sometimes it's not, but it's not as intense as if I was just laying there, especially laying there and focused on it. Mm-hmm. So when you're out walking is a good example of where you're looking at different things. Maybe you're listening to something. So your mind is already put in different places and your body is also moving. So it's like nature's best anti-inflammatory, I think, is just any kind of movement. Now, to do that all day might not be realistic, but if you
that might cause a flare-up.
Yeah, that's the other half of it, is if you move too much, you do it too intense, okay, night's probably going to suck. And so I have really, really bad pain every night I go to bed, and I'm laying in bed and my legs hurt so bad that I'm always like kicking my feet together. It looks real goofy. Like I'm laying on my stomach and I'm just bashing my feet together because that feels better than just laying there. Or I'm just kicking stuff around, or I'm laying on my arms. So that's what a flare-up looks like for me. Otherwise, it can look like me just kind of zoned out and not really with it. My wife could be talking to me or trying to ask me something, and I'm just like, like but my mind's totally not in it, and I don't even hear what she's saying, and I'll have to try and kindly explain, like, I'm just in a lot of pain right now. I'm just trying to get through this pain, and I know it'll end at some point. That you will get through it to the other side. It will subside at some point. It won't be as intense. But right now, I don't know what you're saying. And so that sometimes is difficult, because what makes a relationship work is communication. So if you don't communicate well, that's a problem. But I'm fortunate enough to where she's has this understanding, like if I'm in that state, then don't expect me to move mountains or anything at that time. And I will do my best to like focus on a question, give it an answer, but by just being open about it and be like, hey, I'm having this real problem right now. This might not be good for the next couple hours. And that she's receptive to that solves a lot of problems on its own.
Nice.
So I could go on, but because it looks different a lot. It has a different tone per day. It's never quite the same. And it gets close to feeling the same sometimes, especially that thing at nighttime with my legs and my arms. It's just like any extremity on me is just ridiculously awful. That's pretty much the same, but it's never quite the same intensity. It always feels different in some way. And that's a hard part to explain. But I know a lot of other people maybe feel it in different places in their body than I do too.
Nice. So this is the last question from me, and then I've got some questions from the interwebs, from people on the internet.
Fantastic.
So I want to know how, if at all, the pandemic has affected your fibro.
Nope, not at all.
No?
In fact, it's made it better.
Okay.
It's helped it.
I've done that.
Yeah, and the only way I can explain that is I've had Well, actually, I just thought of something that could make it worse, and that's not getting to your physical therapy appointment. So if that's closed, for a while there, it was pretty crummy. But after I've been able to go back and mask up and get in there, I'd say the pandemic's actually made it better because I can do more research on natural remedies. I have more. It seems that I have more free time and less obligations from other areas of life, like going like family and friends,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of do me, right? Do my own thing. And that includes some of that physical activity and those physical therapy exercises that I learned when I was there. And so all that combined is kind of like I don't want to jinx it here, but I've felt better now than I have in months. And I think that's because I've been able to excel in that area. Like I've been able to actually, I can sit down and read a whole book. I read a whole book yesterday in one day. And I think it's because I didn't have so many distractions from like, and family and friends aren't distractions, but you know how it is where you get messages or you have to be somewhere for somebody's birthday or something. And you have to make an appearance to things, especially with kids. There's not any of that going on right now. So I have a lot more time, which it reminds me of that dude from the Twilight Zone who like, he's the only survivor in the apocalypse or something, like a nuclear bomb goes off and he has all of his books and he goes, there's time now. And then he breaks his glasses and he's like, what? So I feel like that guy before the glasses are broken. So, because
the pandemic gave you permission to prioritize you again.
Yeah, easier. Like I already had been, but it was still kind of like you had all these little side obligations and a lot of things that I do consider distractions. And there's less of that now. So I think for me, that's been good. And a lot of people like us have already been practicing this, right? We've already kind of been isolated and excluded from things. And also, if you're like me and you've had multiple surgeries, we know what it's like to hole up for a good number of weeks or months before we can actually move again and be active. So when I see people getting impatient after 2 months of kind of shutting down and then they're like, I'm going to have a COVID party. Like, it's only been 2 months. That seems a little weak to me. That's my take on it, is that you're being a little bit weak. I think you need like 2 months is nothing. Try 8 and then we'll talk. So if you can't find something to do in 2 months, it's time to take that step back again, reevaluate, and then re-engage and get after it.
Bodhi.diaries from Instagram has asked, what's your number one go-to for fast relief when chronically in pain?
Ooh, I've talked to this person before.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's a good gal. So what is my go-to? Fast relief for me is CBD. CBD products. So I take a hefty dose. I actually have it right here. Hefty dose of, here in the States, my affiliates at the Healthy Place, Wild Theory CBD. And it's an isolate. It's very potent. I take sometimes 4 times what they would recommend because I find that's what works for me. So I know after I take that, I get about 45 minutes until I feel it kick in. All the senses get dumbed down a little bit. I can calm down. The anxiety isn't so high. And then refocusing, whether that means talking to somebody, a friend, reading a book at a slow pace. It doesn't have to be like a thirst for knowledge kind of fast pace. Otherwise, movement and rest when appropriate. If you need to put if I need to put those compression socks on and I need to lay and I need to just be for a while and kind of just work through that. I mean, that's the best you can do with, I think, at least with what I have. What I don't do, also ice helps a lot. Heat doesn't help, ice helps a lot.
Same.
Yeah, it kind of like doesn't make it go away, but kind of dumbs it all down, right? And I've been able to fall asleep with my like terrible migraine, just I have this really giant ice pack that kind of wraps around the back of the head into the neck and the shoulders. And it's like covering it's kind of too big, but I fall asleep on it just because it's I don't know, there's something about that cold that kind of just takes that intensity down a bit, and so it doesn't hurt as bad. But what I wouldn't do is take opiates unless it was like post-operative. I wouldn't take more ibuprofen and Tylenol, because it really, yeah, you might get some relief from Tylenol. I feel it doesn't do anything, but ibuprofen, you might get some relief, but it's going to be short-lived. And it's also just masking it. You're not really, at least with the CBD, I also know that while you could argue that it's somewhat of a mask, and I also have cream and balm that I put on. It's 2 different cream and balm with like different things in it. But when you do that, the CBD also for your body works as a, what would you call that? I mean, as an immune system booster. So not only is it doing that thing for your intense pain and your anxiety or whatever is ailing you, even if you don't feel that amount of relief that somebody like me does, you're still doing right by your body, and that you're kind of using those cannabinoid receptors, right, in the endocannabinoid system, and it's an overall healthy immune response when you're taking that stuff. So it's something that I can not only get the relief from, but I can also feel good about it, because overall, in long term, it's good for my body. So it's kind of twofold. Whereas ibuprofen and Tylenol is not going to have any immune boosting properties. It's actually going to have the opposite, most likely, where you're talking about stomach lining damage, liver damage. And I've seen a lot of, I used to know a couple weightlifters in the past that would just hammer Tylenol every day because they got, you heard of DOMS? I think it's delayed onset muscle syndrome or fatigue,
Right.
or just, because they're lifting all the time. They're these big guys. And then pretty soon they did permanent liver damage. And so you're not going to have that with something like CBD. So if that's something you can get your hands on, I would recommend that. That's been huge for me to just be, and again, this isn't like a magic eraser. I'm still going to hurt. I'm still going to not feel great, but I feel more functional.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a better father. I'm a better husband. I can do things around my house during a flare. I can be a productive member of my family. That's important to me. So
you can at least check off one of the 3 things on your to-do list.
Sure. Yeah.
And what strength of CBD do you take?
So let's see, it says 50 milligrams per. So I'm taking, what was that? I'm taking 100 milligrams, maybe up to 4 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And until I, it's one of those things too. I could drink the whole bottle and I might get like tired and a little woozy, but I'm also still not going to damage myself over it.
Yeah.
So, and that's important to me too, especially, maybe you found this too, Beth, like with anxiety and having, like when I was really heightened PTSD, seizure, blindness, hearing loss mode, when I'm taking a pill that can be damaging or you can accidentally overdose, and I'm in such a funk and messed up headspace that sometimes I don't remember when I took it. And then I think, oh God, I just double dosed. Oh, I think I'm overdosing. And then you freak out. Okay, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't know how many times I've had to ask my poor wife, hey, did you see me take my pills tonight? Because I don't, I have the pill container, right? But it's still, I'm always scared of like double dosing on anything. So with CBD and these natural things, I'm taking 4 times what they would recommend right off the bat, and it's safe and it's still good for your immune system. So that's huge, I think.
Love that. Yeah. Got a question from Angela Breakinbury from UK Fibro Fighters. And she asks, why in this day and age are some doctors and medical professionals not clued up on fibro? Some don't even believe it's real. Shouldn't they all be made to gain knowledge about this as mandatory training? And also, they should give patients info when they are diagnosed instead of telling them to Google it. Why doesn't this happen? So I guess the second part, I don't know how you answer that.
Well, the second part sounds situational because I don't think every physician will tell you that.
I really hope not. I like that rages me to see that as advice that's been given. That's not cool. Like
Yeah.
all doctors tell you not to Google things because you find the worst things out there, don't you? You find the worst.
Well, here's what I'm careful about though. What if this person was in there and they were having a really bad day and they were already upset and depressed, and the physician said, you can find some of this information on Google as well. And they construed that as, oh, my doctor's telling me to Google this shit. Like, F you, man.
Yeah.
So before we like jump to that conclusion that, yeah, the doctor's a douche or something, could it have been just a bad day and we misinterpreted that? Now I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, if that's where they're at, not every physician's like that. You know why? Because there are physicians that specialize in fibro. You just got to find them, if you even want to, that is. And as far as the mandatory training thing, that's a tough one, because to me, from what my understanding is of doctors, at least here in the States, is that they all sort of have their, let's call it like a baseline, right? But then some decide to do more research and training in different areas. Mm-hmm. So to say that they should all be trained in fibro, well, then why don't we make them all trained in pulmonology or pulmonary embolisms? We have to have them 100% trained in all information about pulmonary, and then you could just go on and on. So I don't think it's fair or reasonable. I know it's not what you want to hear, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect them or to have them all know more about fibro. What I do think is reasonable is to have a sector within a specialty clinic that specializes in fibro. Mm-hmm. And that's like their main focus is that type of thing, and how to remedy it, and how to teach people about it, and how to teach people how to live better with that, and the resources that they can dig into to learn more about it. Groups, especially just having a support group like Chronic Victory Podcast example. I'm part of a pain group with my own therapist that I see monthly, and just talking to those guys is, that's huge in its own. So if you have physicians that specialize in that, and they're in their own, just like pulmonary or cardiology, have a fibro department. Maybe that's something to, you talk about advocacy. Oh, instead of like, and I'm not saying the person that asked this question, I'm not directing this at them, but what about the people that are all screaming for advocacy and I'm here for awareness on Instagram? That's great. What if we took that a step further and we actually formulated a way to say, hey, healthcare people, mm-hmm. we go to their, whatever they're called, their CEO or their board of directors or whatever. Hey, we want to build this specialty clinic for fibro, and here's all the people that are here to support this, and this is why. And then they're like, oh shit, like we could make a lot of money doing this, because right, it's a business. We could get a lot of people into this clinic because there's a lot of people that have fibro. By the way, if we have a fibro specific, like fibro sector, let's call it, I keep saying sector because that's the way I do it in my head, but then we'll take a lot of pressure off these other physicians and these other clinics that won't be so flooded with people like me who go in there looking for answers in the wrong places. So you're looking at generated revenue. You're looking at more jobs for a specific department. You're looking at more available appointments, hopefully, because not as many people are going and flooding those other areas. And so I think overall that would be the most beneficial thing, than to just say, hey, all doctors, mandatory fibro training and recertification every year. I think that would be less helpful than the alternative of having like a specialty clinic.
Like it. Let's start the petition. Let's get some signatures.
Yeah.
Take it to Boris.
I'll be part of that.
Yeah, man. How do fibro sufferers get involved in any clinical or research trials, as there doesn't seem to be many around? That's a question from Julie Clifton.
Do we know where she lives?
UK.
See, that's different from where I am, because I live close to a popular hospital and clinics here that does do a lot of research, and they're always looking for people for trials.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So I don't know how you do that in the UK. I don't have a better answer for that, but I think just keep digging and keep checking out. Maybe there's actually what you might be interested in is looking at some sort of private organization that's looking for that kind of stuff, rather than whatever your guys' public medical I'm going to say it again, sector is, whatever the doctors and clinics are there, maybe there's some private organization that's looking for people like that. So yeah, especially if there's like research and development going into some sort of medication that they might be trying to implement and get approved through whatever administration approves things that you can take orally or intravenously or something like that. So just keep digging and trying to find the answers or organizations. Is the best I can say. But I'm fortunate enough here where I don't really have to do that. In fact, we get a lot of spam emails for like, hey, we're looking for a bunch of people to. There's actually also a private company around here that you can literally live there for like a week or two, and it's set up where like there's a rec center and there's like cafeteria, and then they have rooms, and they have you you're either taking the placebo or you're taking an actual medication, and they pay you. You're getting paid to do it, so maybe that could be some of our full-time jobs at some point, as long as the medications don't screw with us too much. The only reason I haven't done it is because it's kind of like, well, I have to be with my family. First of all, I got some kids to be responsible for, but also like, what if I'm not taking the placebo and I get really messed up over it? Do I still get the money if I break out into like hives or something? So
what's the cure for that? Have you already got the answer to that? Because
nah.
I don't want to come out scarred from this.
Yeah.
Fibro has recently been classed as a neurological disorder. So why are most people still referred to musculoskeletal or rheumatology rather than neuro? Also, once diagnosis is made by the above, why do they not refer over to neuro for the more specialised knowledge and management rather than back to GPs who often don't believe it exists, so don't refer on?
It's a long, complicated, but good question.
Yeah. So I think
the first part, read the first part again.
So fibro has recently been classed as a neurological disorder. Again, this is in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So why are most people still referred to that word, man.
Musculoskeletal. Yeah, I had the same problem.
Or rheumatology rather than neuro.
Okay, stop right there. Because there's no cure for fibro. We know how to treat the symptoms. We don't know how to cure the disease yet. So that's the answer to that part. And it seems if it is neurological, which personally I think it is. I think it's genetic and it has to do with neurology. But the neurologist doesn't have something yet that they can do to combat what you're feeling.
Yeah.
The physical therapists, the people
needed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you're talking about more R&D. But so far, the place where you go is to get those symptoms treated as best you can. That's where the physical comes in.
Yeah. So that's why you're then referred back to musculoskeletal and the general practitioner, because
absolutely, yeah.
Musculoskeletal physical will give you the physical activities that will and can help, and the general practitioner can give you the drugs that if you wanted to manage it side by side or one or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
But in my experience, when I was first diagnosed, and as far as I'm aware, this is still the case, after trying a few things, but a trial and error with a general practitioner, if nothing's helping, they should be referring you to pain management clinic. And if they haven't offered that as a solution, you should be asking for that. And that's when you then have a psychological assessment, and you're either put into a physical rehab or you're taken into the mindfulness route, which you and I have discussed before. That's the route I went down initially. And that has always and will always be a mindset for me to go back to for managing it, that comes into and feeds into neurological, because that's all about the brain, retraining the brain.
Yeah. Psychotherapy. I think if you're to that point where the physical, you're not getting answers or relief from physical, I think it's time to start politely making demands to get into some sort of psychotherapy. And so now you are in the realm of neurological, right? Now you're in where your question is coming from. This is where it is, so this is where you're
Yeah.
going. And that's where you're talking about psychotherapy as far as meditation, mindfulness, all those buzzwords, but also just changing and altering the way that you're thinking.
Yeah.
And maybe the part I'm leaving out, or the part that they leave out, is, because to me, I've heard it so much. I've heard mindfulness, and I've heard of predominantly mindfulness too much, to where I don't even want to look into it, because it's just, if it worked, it would work, or something. You're right. Like, it puts a bad taste in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can alter the perception of your reality, that sounds more interesting to me. And that's I think where you can get out of that psychotherapy, which is very important to get real perspective on how you're going to deal with some of these fibro issues.
Yeah, it's a complex condition, and no one has the answers, unfortunately. Like, at the point that I was diagnosed, it was only, and that's going back nearly 10 years now, I think it was only recognized as a real thing within 10 years at that point. So we're like 20, 25 years into understanding what fibromyalgia is and does for people so far. But currently there is no cure, so there is no quick fix for anyone.
Yeah.
A lot of health professionals feel that patients are often the experts of their condition. Is there anything being done in the media to help raise the profile of fibro and its associated problems? Well, I would like to say not enough. But there certainly is. I mean, I appreciate this is a question for you, so you can answer this. There's not enough, but there are some high profile celebrities: Morgan Freeman, Sinead O'Connor, Lady Gaga, who are at least open about having the condition and how they manage it. So if you haven't already checked out Lady Gaga 5'2" on Netflix, have a watch of that.
Yeah, I heard about that, actually.
It's really, really good.
Do me a favor. Could you read me the question one more time?
Sure.
So I can deliver like right after, because I just want to make sure I understand part of it.
Yeah. A lot of health professionals feel that patients are often the experts of their condition. Is there anything being done in the media to help raise the profile of fibro and its associated problems?
Well, let me ask a question before I give an answer. Is it their responsibility in the media to do that? And if it is, in your opinion, why? Why are they responsible for taking responsibility to give us more of whatever it is that you're looking for there, when they don't even probably have the problem themselves? So that's like asking, I don't know, that's like asking a race car driver to tell me everything about baseball. Like, they don't do that. They race cars. Mm-hmm. So I think this is where we come in, though, is where if you, I don't know if I don't lead towards like Chronic Victory Podcast is, and my mission as being, I'm going to start these organizations and start rallying and going places and advocating and things like that. That's not to where I'm at yet. Would I participate in that? Would I even maybe facilitate something like that in the future? Yeah. But this is where we come in, and we need to, I could say what we need to do all day, but I think what it would look like is that we start getting louder and we start getting together in more numbers and telling these different entities, whatever it is there for either news media or again, like people that actually manage these hospitals and clinics, that, hey, there's a number of people that are interested in this thing, and here's the proof, like here's the signatures, here's the people that show up for this meeting or this event. And once that's known and witnessed, then we can start talking about how we can get more information and real awareness out there. But I think to just sit back and kind of wait and see if, why doesn't the news media talk about my illness more? Well, they're probably not ill. And also, who says it's their responsibility? I'm no fan of the news media or any type of media, which is funny because I have a podcast and I'm doing this right now. This to me seems different and more creative and more productive. But again, to kind of rely on other sources to do the dirty work for us is not taking that necessary amount of ownership that I think we got to start taking. And to point out the first part, why I keep seeing the meme too. You probably see this one too, where it's like the doctor knows everything. Does the doctor know better than me, or does the patient that's had it for 10 years know better? Or does the new doctor that's only been on the job for 6 months knows better than somebody who's had the disease for 8 years? And I don't think they try to make it like, yeah, I know better because I'm a doctor. I think they're only trying to, again, like let's just take a step back and look at it for what it is. This person's a professional. They're trained. They have a basic understanding of what we're experiencing. They're probably trying to, portray that in a way to you that maybe you're already way ahead of them because obviously you have lived through it. So I don't necessarily believe that it's always them like trying to be condescending or like they know more than you, but they're trying to help, and sometimes that's misinterpreted as like a them kind of doing you dirty in that respect. So I think there's ways that you can go about that too, if that's the case, or you find yourself in that scenario where it's like, and I don't know what I would say is like, well, respectfully, like, I know what you're about to say. I've lived with this for X number of years. I'm looking for something different from that response that you're giving me, something more. So if you could either provide me with that intel that I'm searching for, or at least point me to where I need to find that. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. And the sad part is you might not get it. Yeah, you might not always get an answer. I've had some of these physicians, these doctors tell me, I just don't know. Like sometimes we just make our we make a best guess based on the knowledge and information that we have, and sometimes we miss and we just don't know. And that's again, do we just wait for them to contact us after our appointment's over, or do we owe it to ourselves to take the responsibility and the ownership to at least formulate like what direction I'm going to go and what the next step is for myself? And I think the latter is what we need to do. So when you do reach those dead ends, or you have that kind of interaction with a doctor who seems to know more than you, but you don't get any of the answers or information that you would hope, again, it's put on us to find out and figure out where you want to take it from there. So the good news is, the bad news is you reached a dead end, you have a little bit more work to do. The good news is maybe this is better opportunity. So if that's where you're at, again, we can say, good. Now we get to learn from that. We get to take that. We get to start exploring and maybe dig deeper into something that we necessarily or weren't necessarily going to dig deeper on before. So we're kind of forced in that situation where we have to do the research. We have to do more work to get to where we want to go.
Absolutely. It's tiring, it's frustrating, but it is our responsibility.
Oh, yeah. I'm just tired just thinking about it.